The time has come. We have breached the hiatus threshold. We have returned anew, again, so that we may finally put some dirt in your eye. Hey guys, what's up? This is Diego here at Cinemageddon Reviews. I am back making videos for this channel once again after yet another long hiatus because I got busy with a whole bunch of other projects that I'm pursuing that I hope to tell you about really soon. And let's be honest, I was kind of hoping to avoid the next installment in this series. But I really wanted to come back, and sooner or later we all have to face the music anyway. It's just that I really wish that music wasn't the remix of People Get Up and Drive Your Funky Soul by James Brown. Anyway, let's continue my long-running series of Spider-Man reviews with another best-worst movie review. This time we're talking about Spider-Man 3. Get your ibuprofen ready, guys, because this one is gonna hurt. And just to warn you guys, if you haven't seen Spider-Man 3, this is gonna contain heavy spoilers, so
Can I take this stupid thing off now?
Yes, you can go.
Thank you.
Well, he's gone. But at least I have you, right, fourth wall? Fifth wall? Interdimensional deity? Fuck no. Shit. Well, I hope you guys are still here, because I'm doing this one way or another. So, Spider-Man 3 was the last in the Tobey Maguire trilogy directed by Sam Raimi. A lot of people were right off the heels of Spider-Man 2, and there was a lot of anticipation leading up to this movie. Spider-Man 2 had quite a few cliffhangers that left us wanting more. Harry Osborn discovered that his dad was the Green Goblin, Peter finally got his life on track, and he got the girl, and Mary Jane left her fiancé at the altar to be stood up by someone else. So there were a lot of questions overall that people had for Spider-Man 3. What was going to be next for these characters? How are the stakes going to be even higher than last time? And that anticipation must have increased tenfold when it was announced that Venom was going to be one of the main villains of the film. And sure, we're all very familiar with Eddie Brock and Venom now, but back then, anybody who was knowledgeable about Spider-Man comics knew how much of a game-changer Venom was for the entirety of the Spider-Man IP. So we were all very excited to finally see a live-action adaptation of the black-suited Lethal Protector, seeing Peter Parker go head-to-head against his darkest impulses, endure a battle within himself, and come to his greatest challenge of all time, which according to Sam Raimi, meant combining emo fashion with dance moves and delivering one-liners that give off very rapey vibes.
Do you think I'm dressed all right? Too fancy or too...
Kidding me? You're looking fine, babe.
So, a lot of people were very disappointed and frustrated with Spider-Man 3. It's pretty understandable, and to be honest, I'm one of those people now, but back when it first came out in theaters, I actually loved it. Granted, I was a child back then, and a pretty stupid one at that. Not sure how much that's changed. But at the time, I was just happy to see the third film in a trilogy, and to see Spider-Man on the big screen one more time. That being said, there were a few things that even at first kinda bothered me. Like, for example, the fact that Venom only appears in the third act, despite being the biggest selling point for this movie. He was what most of the trailers and posters focused on, and most of what people were looking forward to. And the fact that the ending doesn't exactly leave us on a high note like the first two movies did, it seems very bleak, and just kind of leaves us with a sense that the trilogy kind of fizzled out towards the end. And as I grew older and rewatched this movie, I liked it less and less, at least for the reasons I was supposed to. But over the years, this movie did gain a little bit more appreciation, mostly because of in terms of meme status, this movie has quite the reputation nowadays for being unintentionally cringe and friggin' hilarious. There are so many quotable lines like,
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
and just stupid stuff like that that just kind of make this the revenge of the Sith of the Spider-Man movies. Now, before we just start roasting Spider-Man 3 for the meme it's obviously become, I feel like I should point out that there are a couple concepts that this movie handles fairly well. Most of it revolves around when the plot feels unified, so it's really just like a good 30% of the movie where it feels like it has a proper story. Probably the two best scenes in the film are the Sandman fight in the subway with Black Suit Spider-Man and the Peter and Harry fight at Harry's penthouse. And granted, those scenes have their little cringe moments here and there, but for the most part, they do feel like they do have depth and direction, which are two things that are sorely lacking in this film. I'll give you an example. Harry Osborn transforms himself into the Green Goblin at the beginning of this movie. After about 20 minutes of setup, the plot finally feels like it starts getting legs when Harry abducts Peter and tries to kill him. And then... And just like that, we're back to square one until we get to the Sandman stuff. And then that stops, because we get this random scene that pops up out of nowhere where Peter has to save Gwen Stacy from a building. And then that stops because Eddie Brock is being offered a staff job at the Daily Bugle and not Peter. And then that stops because Mary Jane has problems with her play or something. Do you see what I'm getting at? The plot here is an absolute mess. Many people have attributed it to the fact that this movie just has too many villains. But that's only part of the problem. Having a lot of characters in a film isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you use them well, like No Way Home did with all 5 of those villains and all the supporting characters. But when you watch Spider-Man 3, you can tell that they had something completely different in mind. The original plan, as far as I know, was to focus a lot more on Peter's relationship with Harry. After all, that is what the first 2 movies were setting up. But I imagine the second film was so successful that Sony must have been like, hey, this is awesome. Let's take creative control and see how much money we can milk out of a single film. And you can see that in the end result blatantly. I have to say, what we were given in Spider-Man 3 was probably the worst iteration of the Green Goblin of all time. James Franco could have made an awesome follow-up to Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. He wouldn't have been as good, and No Way Home kind of proved that there's no one like Willem Dafoe for the Green Goblin. But we can't deny that Franco had potential, and aside from his obviously problematic personal life, we can't deny that the guy is still a talented actor, and he would have done a much better job if he had been given something better to work with. But what we saw in Spider-Man 3 was just so underwhelming. The suit and glider look absolutely nothing like the Green Goblin, and more like if Shaun White was a supervillain. He felt less like a deranged maniac, and more just like a regular guy on a snowboard. In the first movie, the Green Goblin was methodical and played mind games with Spider-Man, and he tested his ethics and his morals. In this movie, Harry Osborn just tries to kill Peter with some half-brained assassination attempts that backfire horribly each and every time. He also just doesn't have enough screen time to justify what the first 2 films have been setting up. It's really kind of sad. Let's talk about Mary Jane Watson. Oh boy. Look, no offense to Kirsten Dunst, who's obviously doing the best she can with this material, but her character is one of the biggest problems, not just in Spider-Man 3, but in the whole trilogy. I, for one, never understood what Peter saw in her. I mean, yeah, she's pretty, and she's usually nice to Peter, and they grew up together, but as far as the Raimi trilogy was concerned, Mary Jane had little to no character development, and little to no agency. In fact, any feminist could look at these movies and see that this is a terrible character. In the first movie, she leaves her abusive father and gets with Harry, and you can tell that the only reason that happens is because Harry is jealous that Peter gets more admiration from Harry's father than Harry himself. And this is his way of just getting some type of victory over Peter. So really, it's more of a Harry thing than it is a Mary Jane thing. But she's so poorly handled that when she finally does decide to take matters into her own hands, she breaks up with Harry and tries to get with Peter at Norman's funeral.
The audacity! The unmitigated gall!
I'll give you another example. In the second movie, Mary Jane is with another guy, and she's engaged to this guy, which once again only happens to add more tension to Peter's life. It's not even because she's in love with him. In fact, Mary Jane, still engaged to the guy, asks Peter to kiss him so that she can find out whether he's the one for her. Do you know what happens next? She gets kidnapped by Doc Ock, and the only purpose she serves for the rest of the film is to be the damsel in distress. In fact, she's such a weak character that by the end of Spider-Man 2, she can't even commit to the guy that she's about to marry. And I hate to break it to the stubborn fanboys out there, but even Spider-Man 2 isn't a perfect film. Now, in Spider-Man 3, things do improve a little bit for her character. She does gain a little bit of agency, because this time around, her problems don't solely revolve around her love life. She's struggling in her career, and because Peter doesn't understand her problems and is acting like a jackass, it's wearing on her mental health, which is perfectly understandable. But the script ruins that too, because the only solution she can think of is to just confide in Harry behind Peter's back. Because apparently that's what good female characters do? Yeah, sure, just let men solve all your problems. You don't need to be an independent person. You also don't need to be mature about it, I guess. Just kiss other men without breaking it off with your partner first. And by the end of the movie, she never really seems to get her life back on track. She ends up working at some cafe as a waitress who occasionally sings on stage. Again, very sad. Another issue I had with the film was how underdeveloped the Sandman is. You get this very compelling motivation at the beginning of the film where he's trying to help his sick daughter, but we never really go into it beyond that. We never find out what exactly is happening to her or really get much of a relationship to root for with these two characters. It seems less of character development and more of a crutch so that the writers can say that they established enough to give us a compelling reason to root for this character. And when they realize that that's not enough to justify a rivalry against Spider-Man, all of a sudden we get this really stupid subplot where it turns out he's the one who killed Uncle Ben. And then at the end, that turns out to be an accident. You mean to tell me that Peter Parker spent 3 movies believing he was at fault for his uncle's murder, when it turns out that it's because Flint Marko didn't know where his trigger finger was?
See, this is why I didn't want to help you on this.
What are you still doing here?
Look at me. I'm the Bully Maguire version of you, and you're talking about Spider-Man 3. I pretty much have to be here, pretty much by definition.
Did you put him up to this? But how does that even make sense?
One of the other guys must have gotten lazy on the meta writing or something, I don't know. Look, just keep doing the review, I don't care.
No, I have a headache. Get over here and talk about this movie, please.
Fine.
Alright, since I'm here, let's talk about Venom and how much I hate him in this movie. Now, first of all, I actually like the design of Peter Parker's black suit. I think that it's cool and edgy looking, and it makes Spider-Man look tougher and more intimidating, which is what they were going for, obviously. Beyond the aesthetic, the way the suit plays a part in the story conceptually is a good idea. I like the idea that the symbiote released a side of Peter Parker that we haven't seen before and that allowed him to gain some more control of certain aspects of his life, like gain more respect from his peers, like J. Jonah Jameson and his landlord, and it even helped him beat some of the other villains. Speaking as a writer, there was a lot of potential here, but in execution, it's very hit or miss. In fact, it's more miss than it is hit. What I mean is that the suit could have been used as a way to streamline all of these different subplots and make the story more uniform and connected. One of the weirdest choices from a writing standpoint is that the symbiote lands on Earth from that meteor and follows Peter home around the 10 to 15 minute mark of the film, yet it doesn't actually attach itself to him until an hour into the film. If the symbiote had attached itself to him earlier, so many things would have been so much better and much more justified. The story could have had a lot more depth and more time to explore that darker side of Peter in a more meaningful way. Instead, outside of any action scenes, the only exploration we get of Peter's darker side is this weird montage which is taken completely out of context and is just so goofy. There is an editor's cut of Spider-Man 3 out there that does improve that slightly. It depicts Peter and the symbiote's relationship in a different way, as sort of like a drug addiction with a Jekyll and Hyde twist to it. There's a deleted scene that you can find on YouTube where Peter looks at himself in the mirror, and it hints at Peter essentially being trapped inside of his own body while the symbiote takes complete control. And while it doesn't completely forgive how goofy this shit looks, it does help you look at it in a different light, where you're not sure if this is a different side of Peter or another person completely. The movie's novelization is like 10 times darker than that, especially on the Eddie Brock side of things. And there's a lot of stuff that I won't go into because it's a completely different conversation, but it's very much in line with how dark Venom is in the comics. Ultimately, my normie counterpart would agree that whatever the plan originally was for Venom, it doesn't change the fact that the Venom character doesn't show up until the third act of this movie. It doesn't change the fact that Topher Grace was a terrible casting choice for Eddie Brock. It doesn't change the fact that they didn't give Venom that demonic voice he has. That's actually something the Venom solo movies got right. And it doesn't change anything about how poorly handled he was as a character, or as a plot device for the overall story. So to sum it all up, Spider-Man 3 was a giant misfire. Despite having certain aspects of it that worked occasionally, the story and the way it handled its characters overall are a far cry from what the first 2 movies were setting up. It's pretty fair to say that while it's not a completely horrible movie, this is one of the most disappointing sequels I've ever seen. But hey, at least we can thank Sam Raimi for completely misrepresenting emo.
Now dig on this.
Normie, I finished my part. You can come out now.
I don't want to do it, bro. I can't take it anymore.
Look, just give the rating and then we're done, okay? I want to go back to my dimension.
They know what the rating is.
Well, I need a sound bite, okay? Can you please deliver it on camera?
Fine. How's this for a sound bite? And with that said, our rating for Spider-Man 3 is 0 out of 10. Alright guys, it's finally over. We did it. No more Spider-Man 3. We finished our reviews of the Raimi trilogy. It's about time we did that. Now, Normie over there is about to recover from his trauma and get ready for his next review, which I'm sure he is about to come back from the bathroom any second to deliver, so I guess we're just going to have to wait. Wait a second. Wait a second. Wait, whoa. The next movie that came out after Spider-Man 3 was...
Don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
The Amazing Spider-Man.
Human beings are weak, pathetic, feeble-minded creatures.
Oh no. He's coming back, right? He's coming back, right? Oh, no.
Open this door. Normie, open it. No.